Hare Krishna. So, let us first begin with Mangalacharan prayers. I will share my screen and then we can recite the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Tasri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutah Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay. Now we can recite the verses, invocation verses for Srimad Bhagavatam. I will share those verses also. So you can see on the screen here. So we pay our respectful obeisances to Srila Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, and also to Sri Suta Goswami and Shaunakadi Rishis. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Srimad Bhagavatam Mahaprana ki Jai. Okay. Now we will start today's reading. So today we will go over this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 12, verse number 10. So this chapter is titled The Birth or Appearance of Parikshit Maharaj. And before we start with the verse, in this verse, a very important thing is happening, which is the sort of the vanquishing of the Brahmastra will happen in this verse. So let us see that. 1 second. Okay, so let us recite the verse and the synonyms and the translation. Astratejah swagadaya niharam iva gopatihi vidhamantam sannikarshe paryakshataka ityasau. I will recite a couple of more times and then devotees can recite if they would like. Astratejah swagadaya niharam iva gopatihi vidhamantam sannikarshe paryakshataka ityasau. Astratejah swagadaya niharam iva gopatihi vidhamantam sannikarshe paryakshataka ityasau. Would anybody like to repeat?
Hey, Shabu, I can try to. Astrateja swagadaya niharam iva gopatihi vidhamantam sanikarshe parekshata ka ityasau.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I will try.
Sure.
Astrateja svavadhyam haram eva gopita vidhamantam chanikarse paryekasta ka iti sa.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? All right. So let us proceed with the synonyms. Astratejah, radiation of the Brahmastra. Swagadaya, by means of his own club. Niharam, drops of dew. Iva, like. Gopatihi, the sun. Vidhamantam, the act of vanishing. Sannikarshe, nearby. Paryakshata, observing. Kaha, who. Ityasau, this body. Translation. The Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child who thought about who he was. Okay. Good. So the translation once again is, the Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child who thought about who he was. So in this chapter, chapter number 12, the birth of Parikshit Maharaj is being described, and how Parikshit Maharaj got darshan of the Lord within the womb of his mother Uttara itself. So Parikshit Maharaj was blessed right from his birth. The yogis and the big ascetics, they perform austerities for many ages, many years, and then they get to see the Lord. But here Maharaj Parikshit is so fortunate and so blessed that he got the darshan of the Lord right within the womb, apparently without doing any such thing in this present life, which he is about to start outside the womb. The life starts within the womb, but it's how fortunate he was. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, he could hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Narad Muni even before he came out of the womb of his mother, Kayadu. So that is the nature, or that is the stature, the greatness of Parikshit Maharaj. And there was a specific purpose for the Lord appearing in the womb, which is to save Parikshit Maharaj from the Brahmastra, which was fired by a demon, Ashwathama. Even though he was the son of a Brahmana, his qualities were demoniac. And he wanted to finish off the race, or the dynasty of the Kurus, especially of the Pandavas, who had won the Mahabharat war, and by firing the most powerful weapon present in any Kshatriya's arsenal, the Brahmastra. There is no more powerful weapon than that. And he directed this weapon to the womb of Uttara. So even though it's a weapon of mass destruction, or even capable of destroying a lot, it can be also directed to a very pinpointed location, like in this case at the womb of Uttara, to just destroy that location, and not anything else. So that is the power. We do not have such weapons. We may have a nuclear weapon which can destroy, but you cannot use the nuclear weapon to destroy one person. So that was the nature of the Brahmastra, but it was almost invincible. And Lord Krishna, the protector, is more powerful than the destroyer. So, and Lord Krishna is the greatest protector. These days we are going through a seminar by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, and in our temple, and he's doing this series on Sharanagati, and one of the limbs of Sharanagati is Rakshishyati iti Vishwaso. So the devotees have this firm faith that the Lord will protect. So the Lord can protect even against the Brahmastra. It does not matter what is the size or the power of the weapon. The Lord is the greatest protector. If he wants to protect, even the Brahmastra will be rendered useless. So here, in this particular verse, we see that the Lord is vanquishing, or is nullifying or deactivating the Brahmastra. So the Lord entered the womb of Uttara, and with his club or mace, what we call as Swagadaya, it is called his own Gada. With his Gada, he destroyed or vanquished the Brahmastra. So that is what is happening in this verse. And then Parikshit Maharaj, the little embryo, he's 10 months old. So that we will see in the next verse. It says Dashamasaya. So he's looking at this whole sort of epic scenery from within his womb, and he is seeing that the Brahmastra is being destroyed by the Gada of Lord Shri Krishna. So that is what is going on in this verse. There is no purport in this verse, but we will talk a little bit about some aspects of this verse. Okay. So once again, the translation is, the Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child who thought about who he was. So 3 points are there in this verse. Oh, I think I stopped sharing. Let me share again. So there are 3 points in this translation. First is that the Lord is vanquishing, or he is subduing the Brahmastra. That is point number one. Point number two is that there is an analogy that is given about how he is vanquishing the Brahmastra, just like the sun evaporates a drop of dew. So that's point number two. And point number three was that Parikshit Maharaj is observing all this. So there are 3 points in this translation. First, that the Lord vanquished the Brahmastra. Second is an analogy of how he vanquished the Brahmastra with his Gada. Second point is analogy. It is given that how the sun, in the same way like the sun vanquishes drops of dew. And the third analogy, or not the third analogy, the third point is that Parikshit Maharaj is seeing all this. So these are the 3 things in this verse. Okay. Now, I would like to request something from all of you. There is a very nice thing which I appreciated about Srila Prabhupada in this verse and the translation. So I will make this bigger. Can any of you spot some kind of something in the translation versus the verse? Little exercise, morning exercise for the mind. So there's the verse translation. There's the verse itself. Astratejah swagadaya niharam iva gopatihi vidhamantam sannikarshe paryayikshata ka ityaso. So there is that verse, and then there is Srila Prabhupada's translation. So is there any obvious thing that you observe in the translation directly from the verse? Anybody?
The last sentence is not there. He was observed by the child who thought about who he was.
He was Paryayikshata. So he was observed. Paryayikshata means he was doing parikshana. That's how he got the name Parikshit, actually.
Right.
But you are on the right track.
Oh yeah, so it is thought about who he was, the Parikshit Maharaj's point of view. Is that not being described in the verse, Prabhu?
No, something before.
Oh, Sannikarshe, nearby.
That is also there. Or you are right. Maybe that's nearby is not there, but something more obvious than that. You are absolutely on the right track. So, so let's go word by word and do Anvaya. Astratejaha. So that is radiation of the Brahmastra. We see here, and we see in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra. Then there is Swagadaya. Where is this? Where is this in the translation?
No mention of the Gada.
There's
no mention of the Gada, the mace.
Yeah, there is no mention of the Gada in the translation. However, so I just was appreciating Srila Prabhupada. I don't know, he might have done it, knowingly or not. This is just my observation, and I thought I will share my appreciation of Srila Prabhupada. Another thing, so rest of it is there. Niharam iva gopatihi is like the sun is, evaporating the dew. So that is there, just as the sun evaporates drops of dew. And Vidhamantam Sannikarshe. So Sannikarshe may not be there directly, but it's a small verb, I feel, nearby. But vanquishing is there. And Paryekshata ka ityasau. So the child observed and thought who he was. So this all is there. Now, in the translation, the Lord was thus engaged. So where is the Lord here in the verse?
So is it from the previous verse? Is it kind of like anubhriti coming from the previous verse?
Yes, definitely. So it is coming from the previous verse. That is one that is perfectly correct. And many translations by other acharyas also mention that it is coming from the previous verse. Correct. But okay, so those are the points. So Swagadaya is not present, correct?
Yes, Prabhu.
In the translation, I thought, at least my appreciation for Srila Prabhupada was that there is no difference between the Lord and his paraphernalia. The Gada is the paraphernalia of the Lord. So whether the Gada is vanquishing or it is written here that the Lord was engaged in vanquishing, it does not really make a difference because the Lord is no different from his paraphernalia, and Srila Prabhupada is making that apparent from his translation. That was my small, as I was reading and I was trying to find each word, I thought, wow, Srila Prabhupada has perfectly translated this verse.
Makes sense, Prabhu. Very nice, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice.
So anyway, that was one point. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Okay. So we said there are 3 points in this verse. One point is that the Lord was subduing the Brahmastra. So we discussed that a little bit, that how the Lord vanquished the Brahmastra with his Gada. Niharam iva gopatihi, just like the sun evaporates a drop of dew. So I was just thinking about this, the sun evaporating a drop of dew. Like the point is that what chance, like what absolute chance does the drop of dew have in front of the sun? The earth itself, if we see, is I kind of, let me share my screen again. If you see this is the sun, and these pictures are to scale. These are not out of scale pictures. Oh, wait. Are you seeing this? Yeah. So the sun is out of, this is not an out of scale picture. This is an in scale picture of the earth and the sun. The earth itself is such a small particle in front of the sun, and on the earth, a drop of dew is a further tiny particle on the earth. What chance does a drop of dew have in front of the sun? I have another picture I found, which is like, again, the distance may not be to scale, but the sizes are to scale. And here, this is even more mind-boggling. You see the sun here, and that little tiny dot there over there is the earth. And there is absolutely no chance for a drop of dew to stand against the sun. So that is the nature of the Brahmastra, the big Brahmastra that we know and realize against the sun. So the Lord Krishna is compared to the sun, and Brahmastra is a drop of dew. So here we see that just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. So this was the sort of the comparison between the sun and the drop of dew. The drop of dew has absolutely no chance. In the same way, the Brahmastra has absolutely no chance in front of the Lord. So the comparison is just too great. It's just unimaginable. Even if you put a ratio, 1 is to so much, it will have countless number of zeros in front of the one. That is the sort of, it's not like an equal or even a close match. And even though it is written here in the way that the Lord was engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra with his mace, with his gada, it wasn't an equal fight at all. It was like the fight between the sun and a drop of dew. So that is the greatness of the Lord, and the Brahmastra is extremely, extremely tiny in front of the Lord. Now that brings us to the third point. So we discussed 2 points. One is that the Lord vanquished the Brahmastra. Second point is the sort of the unequal match between the two. And once that has been established, then the third point is that of complete sense of wonder by the child, that how is it possible? And he was completely surprised that the Lord vanquished the Brahmastra so easily, and he was wondering, who is this personality? Who was he? So that is the third point that comes in this verse. So the feeling or the emotion in the observer, or in this case, which is Parikshit Maharaj as a embryo about to be born, 10-month-old embryo, is that how is this possible? The Brahmastra, which is so powerful, there is absolutely no possible explanation that a person could vanquish it so easily, with so much ease. There is absolutely no possible explanation of this activity of vanquishing the Brahmastra. So that creates a sense of wonder, a sense of surprise, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So in this case, we are seeing a sense of complete wonder, surprise, a shock, kind of inability to understand what is going on at all by the observer. So paryakshata ka ityaso. So by the way, he was very, very observant child. So he observed this activity as well as he observed the person performing this activity. And when it will be written later in the Srimad Bhagavatam that when he comes out of the womb, when he takes birth, as if, in his like body separate from the mother, he goes out and observes everyone, whether this person is the same Lord Krishna who had saved me in the womb. And that is how he gets the name Parikshit, who is very careful in observing everyone and trying to see the Lord in everyone. So that is Parikshit Maharaj. That's why he was given this name by the sages, because they knew he will be very, very observant in finding the Lord in everyone. So anyway, at this moment, Parikshit Maharaj is very, very surprised on seeing this activity and the person performing this activity, and is not able to understand how can a person subdue the Brahmastra so easily. So our acharyas describe this sense of awe and wonder and surprise and complete shock in few ways this can happen. Now here Parikshit Maharaj was in this kind of a surprise by directly seeing the activity and the person performing the activity. This another way of getting this surprise is by hearing about the activity from somebody else. And a third way of coming into this mood of extreme surprise is by remembering a past incident and reliving it, and reminiscing it, and going through it in your mind again. So there are various ways in which one can go into this mood of complete surprise about the activities of the Lord. So our acharyas give certain examples and certain incidents where great devotees, just like Parikshit Maharaj, have been completely surprised by the nature of the activity being done by the Lord. And those who know the Lord well, but in that moment they are unable to realize how can anybody, including our dear Lord, do this. So first we will deal with direct perception, or by directly seeing from one's own eyes. So two examples are or three examples are given specifically by our acharyas. So, and this part of this example we heard from Hari Parshad Prabhuji when he was visiting Portland a few weeks back, that Narad Muni, he saw Lord Krishna marrying 16,000 princesses after they were liberated from Narakasura in 16,000 different palaces. And he went into each palace and he saw the same Lord Krishna, but he was not a replica. He was the full, what is known as the Prakashamurti of Lord Krishna, performing marriage separately with 16,000 princesses. So he was completely surprised. Similarly, a little bit later, Narad Muni comes back and sees Lord Krishna in his own palace in 16,000 different palaces. He saw 16,000 different Lord Krishnas performing different activities simultaneously. In some case, he was being served by the queen. In some case, he was playing chess with the queen. In some case, he was feeding some children, some kids. In some case, he was doing fire sacrifice. All these things he was doing simultaneously. Like in one case, he was doing one activity. In one case, he was doing another activity. And Narad Muni, when he saw this, he was completely stunned. He was mortified at how is it even possible. It's not that Narad Muni is not familiar with the sort of the mystic art of replicating oneself, but this was completely different than that. These were not replicas. Replicas are known as Kaya Vyuha, and they cannot do completely different activities while there are replicas. They have to be doing similar activities. But in this case, they were the Prakashamurtis, a concept that Narad Muni was completely unaware of. And the Lord himself was present in his fullness in all those 16,000 different forms, doing different activities at the same time. So this was all being done simultaneously, and Narad Muni was his mind was completely boggled. He was unable to fathom this. And when he saw this, he was taken aback with a sense of great surprise, great wonder as to really even the Lord, he thought it's not possible for the Lord to do this. But he saw the Lord doing this. And this was this one instance or two instances. There's marriage and then a post-marriage. Then in another case, our acharyas mention that when the Lord lifted the Govardhan hill, when he was a small child, 7 years old, he lifted the Govardhan hill. And one of the elderly gopis was very surprised. I mean, all of them were surprised, but they were just so much taken over by the love for the Lord. But some of them were in this mood of complete surprise and awe of the Lord. And it is mentioned that one of them went up to Mother Yashoda when the Govardhan pastime was happening and said that you're this little Krishna who drinks your milk. That little baby he's lifting this Govardhan hill just like he lifts a ball and plays with a ball. This Govardhan hill is no more bigger than a playing ball for your child who used to suck breast milk from your breast. So either he is this, whether is he the small child or playing with a ball, or is he lifting Govardhan hill? Which one is it? I cannot figure it out completely. It is out of my understanding. And like that, this elderly gopi exclaims to Mother Yashoda. So she's seeing this wonderful act of Govardhan hill happening, and she cannot fathom it. She cannot understand that on the one hand, this is the small boy who is drinking the milk of his mother and playing with a ball. And on the other hand, he is lifting this Govardhan hill like a ball. And this is completely like this analogy is just so great. The difference is so great, lifting a ball versus lifting a hill. It is as great as that sun versus the drop of dew. So it cannot be fathomed at all. And that is what generates the sense of shock, the sense of surprise within this gopi. That is one more example. Okay. Then there is, so these were the examples when one sees directly the activity and the doer of the activity. So what were the examples we covered? So first of all, this Parikshit Maharaj example itself, when he sees the activity of subduing the Brahmastra by Lord Krishna. Then two examples of Narad Muni when he sees Lord Krishna marrying 16,000 princes, and later when he sees Lord Krishna interacting in different ways with his queens in 16,000 different palaces at the same time, doing different activities. And the fourth example is that of the gopi seeing the Lord lift the Govardhan hill like a ball, like a playing ball. So these are the four examples based on direct seeing the activity of the Lord. Then there is the sense of surprise on hearing the activity of the Lord. So the example that is given by our acharyas is when Parikshit Maharaj was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Sri Shukadev Goswami. So Shukadev Goswami was describing this vanquishing of Narkasur by Lord Sri Krishna. So Lord Sri Krishna was fighting Narkasur. So let me just share that example or this scenario. This is Canto 10. Chapter 50. Oh, am I sharing? Probably not. Chapter 59. Verse number 16, 17, 18, and 19. At that moment, Lord Gadagraja shot his sharp arrows at Bhaumasura's army. These arrows, displaying variegated feathers, soon reduced that army into a mass of bodies with severed arms, thighs, and necks. The Lord similarly killed the opposing horses and elephants. Lord Hari then struck down all the missiles and weapons the enemy soldiers threw at him, O hero of the Kurus, destroying each and every one with 3 sharp arrows. Meanwhile, Garuda, as he carried the Lord, struck the enemy's elephants with his wings. Beaten by Garuda's wings, beak, and talons, the elephants fled back into the city, leaving Narakasur alone on the battlefield to oppose Sri Krishna. So we see here the battle of Narkasur and Lord Shri Krishna. And the important part is that he vanquished each and every one with 3 sharp arrows. So it's not like he's using 3 arrows on each of them. This is a total of 3 arrows. For vanquishing, Narkasur had brought 11 Akshauhini Sena. So each Akshauhini is like a big battalion in itself with thousands of elephants, horses, men, and chariots, and so on, and 11 Akshauhini Sena. And I think in the Mahabharat war, the Kauravas had 11 Akshauhini Senas, if I'm not wrong. Maybe I'm getting the number wrong, but huge. That was the size of the army that Narkasur had brought. And Lord Shri Krishna vanquished that entire army with just 3 arrows. It took how many arrows for Arjuna to vanquish the Kauravas in the Mahabharat war? So many of them. But when Lord Krishna was fighting Narkasur, with just 3 arrows, he vanquished the whole army. So this was, again, the comparison is just too great. The order of magnitudes are like just too vast to fit in our head. And when Parikshit Maharaj was hearing this, he's himself a warrior. He's a Kshatriya, and he's not new to the art of battle and war. And when he heard from Shukadev Goswami, so this is what we are discussing, the sense of surprise on hearing from someone else. So when Parikshit Maharaj heard this from Shukadev Goswami, then he felt this sense of extreme surprise that how is it possible that 11 Akshauhini Senas can be destroyed with just 3 arrows? And this was just too unimaginable, too great to fathom. Just like in his womb, in the womb, Parikshit Maharaj couldn't fathom how can one person simply with a gada subdue the Brahmastra, none other than the Brahmastra itself. So this was the sense of awe and surprise on hearing from somebody else. And finally, the example given, and these examples I'm taking, anybody can guess where these examples I'm taking from? Who has compiled these? So these are given by Sri Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So the final example that he gives is, and then of course commentaries by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, they expand on these as well. So that's why I was saying our previous acharyas. So is the example of, or is this the story of Brahmaji when he stole the cowherd boys and the calves. And what happened was Brahmaji was, obviously he was corrected. The Lord expanded himself into all the calves and the cowherd boys, and Brahmaji at that time was very surprised when this act happened. But what the beautiful thing that we read from our Acharya's descriptions is that Brahmaji, when he went back to Brahmaloka, he would describe this to the other residents of Brahmaloka, of the incident that happened where he was, corrected by Lord Krishna. And as he's explaining, as he's sharing this whole incident, and he's himself remembering it, he is getting drowned in this sense of surprise about the Lord's greatness, that he's describing this to the other. This is not mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam directly, because in the Bhagavatam what we have is the Brahma Vimohan Leela itself, when this actually happened. But we see this from our Acharya's writings, that when he was describing this to other residents later of Brahmaloka, he was remembering it, that he's saying that all the Gopas were looking like four-handed Vishnus. And the Gopas, some of them were very fair complexioned, but he could see that some of those Gopas were now darker complexioned. And they were looking like four-handed Vishnus, because Lord Krishna had expanded into all of them. And they were all wearing pitambara, the yellow-colored clothes. And he also saw other Brahmajis from other universes and all coming and worshipping each of those Gopas who were in the Vishnu, who were looking like the four-handed Vishnu forms. And he was like completely surprised. Who are all these other Brahmas? Who are these these Gopas who are looking like four-handed Vishnu forms with slightly darker complexions, but wearing yellow-colored clothes and decorated and ornaments like the Lord? And as he was narrating this to the other residents of Brahmaloka, he was himself completely drowned in the sense of awe and surprise of the Lord's greatness. So by remembering, he was getting into, again, he was reliving that whole sense of surprise during the act of remembering these pastimes of the Lord. So we discussed about seeing the pastime with your own eyes. We discussed about hearing it from someone else. Parikshit Maharaj heard about the Narkasur's army getting destroyed with 3 arrows from Shukadev Goswamis. That's by hearing. And the third is by remembering. That Brahmaji remembered how he was subdued by Lord Vishnu, by Lord Krishna. And the final one is by conclusion. You don't see, you don't hear, you don't do anything, but just by conclusion, you are completely taken by surprise. So what is the example of that? The example of that is that at one time, there was a great forest fire, and all the Gopas and the calves, they were separated. And the forest fire, called as the Davagni, was about to just engulf everyone. Everybody was going to vanquish. And the Gopas and the calves, they were separated. The Gopas could see that there is now no chance for the calves to survive in the forest fire. And the forest fire was approaching towards them as well. And then Lord Krishna told all of them to close their eyes. So they all closed their eyes. They could not, therefore, see what is happening. And immediately after they closed their eyes, Lord Krishna swallowed the entire forest fire. And then when they opened their eyes, they all saw that they were with the calves. They were all safe and sound. And everything was fine, and the forest fire was gone. So they did not know what happened in the meantime while the eyes were closed, but they know that Lord Krishna was there. They know that Lord Krishna asked them to close their eyes. They know that Lord Krishna asked them to open their eyes. So just by conclusion, they knew that Lord Krishna had saved them from this great forest fire. So imagine a big forest fire. We have some forest fires in Oregon. We are not completely unaware of what a forest fire is, but these forest fires, there's nothing in human capacity that can contain these forest fires. You just have to hope and pray that there's rain and the winds change and the forest fire just subsides on its own. But Lord Krishna saved all of them. So they were all very, very surprised. How can our little dear friend Krishna just extinguish the forest fire just like that in a few moments while their eyes were closed? So they were very surprised on the activity as well as the person performing the activity, which is Lord Shri Krishna. And even though they did not see anything, they did not hear anything, they did not remember anything, simply by conclusion, they realized that how great the Lord is, and very, very out of a sense of surprise. So these are some of the examples given by our previous acharyas. And the prerequisite for experiencing this sense of surprise is love for the Lord, is favorability towards Krishna. Otherwise, somebody can think, this is all just fairy tale. Even Superman movies or comic books, they also say all these things. All this is just nothing. So he will not be attracted to Lord Krishna. There will be no sense of surprise. It will just be like, okay, it's just a figment of somebody's imagination. One can write whatever they want. And so favorability and faith in Lord Krishna is the prerequisite. And Parikshit Maharaj is a pure devotee right from birth. And that is why he was taken by this sense of surprise. Who is this person who can so easily vanquish the Brahmastra, just like the sun can subdue or can evaporate the dew? So that was sort of my some points on this verse. So I will conclude here. Once again, the verse is Astratejah swagadaya niharam iva gopatihi vidhamantam sannikarshe paryakshataka isya ityaso. The translation being by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child who thought about who he was. Okay. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth-raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. That's what I wanted to share about this verse. There was no purport on this one, but there was some opportunity to discuss the Ashcharya Bhava or the Adbhut Bhava among the devotees of the Lord. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's discussion. It is 8:59, so we are right on time. Are there any comments or corrections or any reflections or questions? Please feel free to share.
Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. It's such a beautiful class, Prabhuji. Usually, when devotees see, as devotees who perform the seva of giving lectures, when you see there's no purport, like, okay, we can skip this next. But still you meditated so deeply and you shared these pastimes and you divided them into three, right? Like all of them, different aspects of it. So it was very beautiful to just recollect and hear it. Thank you so much for sharing. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. I didn't do anything. It was Srila Rupa Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I am just a crow repeating what I hear from our great acharyas. Thank you for that encouragement. And I guess then we can close the discussion. Okay, thank you so much. So we'll see you all at the temple. 10:30, we have the beginning of the third day of the seminar by Shriman Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji, who's visiting us in his busy schedule. He still found 4 days to give to Portland. So we are discussing series on Sharanagati. So please come. Also, there is some cultural program today with dramas and all. So please come for that as well on Narsingh Chaturdashi, the appearance day of Lord Sri Narsinghadev, which happened a few days back. So please come to the temple at 10:30 a.m. and we hope to see you all there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Nitai Satchidanand Dev Bhagwan ki jai. Hare Krishna.